before we get into heavy questions, I got a question. Like one of my guests on here knows you.
Wait, good or bad? Do I own money?
You probably do. But actually, you know what? You do owe him money. Why? Because he's running for Congress.
Who? Oh, John Myers.
John Myers. Yeah. So if you haven't donated to him yet,
I did.
You should.
I threw some money at my brother.
Too.
He's a great dude. If I lived in that district of the great state of Virginia, he's the logical choice. I love John and fully support him. He's pro psychedelics, so he's got my vote. Period. Yep.
Well, not only that, but he's just a great dude. But how did you guys meet? I'm just curious.
College.
Really?
I've known him for, God, what are we going to do? 30? I graduated in 1991 from college. So however many years that is however many years I've known John. And his career in the Marine Corps is just, I called him Forrest Gump. He just seemed to be in every big thing that happened, John was there. Whether it was, the Benghazi or Scott O'Grady shoot down or rescuing as a civilian, helping rescue our Americans left behind in Afghanistan. You can't make up that guy's career. And I strongly recommend you throw him a couple shekels. Every dollar helps John. And if you live in that district, obviously there is no other choice but Lieutenant Colonel Myers for Congress.
Yeah, he told me that he got the nickname Forrest Gump, but he didn't tell me who it came from, so I know where it came from now. I love it.
I'm good at giving people call signs, so that was easy.
Oh, that's awesome. I remember, one of my questions was, talk to me about the day where you're at September 11th. I remember where I was at. I was with my buddy, going to. We were doing all the things, and I had just gotten home from from Kuwait, and I was over at in the sand doing all the things a weapons loader would do. Came home. September 11th happened. They locked down the base. Our base that I was at in Sioux City, Iowa, did live load. They were up, escort and Air Force One around. And what's super crazy about this is, and I think you'll appreciate this, is the guy who lives down the street from me was in Omaha, Nebraska, in the war room with Bush.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a historic place, man. Wow.
Yeah, Eric, he lives down the street from me, and he tells me the story all the time, and I'm like, man, I think you're so full of it. I don't believe you. And his wife was like, no, this is one story you can believe.
He's usually full of shit with other stories, but this one's legit.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Such a historic day that changed so much. But when you think about that day, that moment, and you think about all the things that happened and transpired, ton of leadership stuff came out of it for you. And just curious, like, how does that impact how you lead today and the lessons that you learn from, like, you got punched in the face today. Like, that's like a Mike Tyson knockout punch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I had it happen to me earlier this year. I was telling you about it a little bit. And I got punched in the face square in the mouth. And not quite on the same day, the same caliber of world events going around us, but like, how did you talk a little bit more about how that inspires you to lead today?
Yeah, it's a great question, because if you can take what I'm about to say and implement it, I guarantee you it will make your life better. And this ain't no Tony Robbins feel good bullshit. This is the truth, especially after I've done the medicine work. And it is this: if you do get punched in the face like you did, I've been punched in the face massive amount of times. Now, when I'm punched in the face, I show gratitude. I am grateful. Okay. Because after doing the medicine work, I know that is God shifting me, moving me for a reason. Now, you have a choice. And I told you on September 11th or 12th, whenever I got furloughed, whenever it was, I gave myself a little bit of time to have some ego, to fucking cry and rant and be pissed off at the world. And then I looked at thousands of Americans putting posters up at ground zero of loved ones. And I'm like, Whiz, get over yourself. Get up and move. So if you can show gratitude, Slider, Mark Keller, F-14 guy, he's done the medicine. We gave him a healing grant. He's a different human being. Different human being from what? He was cleared hot on a bad guy house in Iraq. Sure that's a bad guy house? Yep, man, cleared hot. Are you sure? Absolutely. Boom. He killed 12 innocent Iraqis. 3 generations of Iraqis. No fault of his own. Came home drunk, drugs, suicide attempts. But years later, after the medicine and talking to me on a podcast, he's like, Whiz, I'm grateful for my suffering. It allowed me to be where I am today. Okay, so long answer, short question. In those moments when you do get punched in the face, ask. And if you don't like the word God, it doesn't offend me, put something else in there. Source, divine, creator, universe. You ready? Boom, kicked in the face. What is the universe trying to tell me? Take away the universe hates me, I'm a shitty guy. No, stop with that type of stuff. What is this trying to show me? What is the message here? And if you can get rid of the ego and the self-pity for or indulge in that for a little bit and then go, okay, give yourself an official mourning period and then shit can it and move. Once you show some gratitude for getting kicked in the jimmy or punched in the face, it shifts your mindset. Okay? Because the easiest thing to do is wallow. Self-pity and woe is me and all that shit. And that ain't going to help anybody, man. You read, Luttrell's book or watch the movie, man. Hey, I got shot. You're living in the past, man. Right now we're in a gunfight. Let's get moving. So be present. The event, the kick in the face, the kick in the jimmy already happened. Be present and let's move. So yeah, that showing some gratitude in the moments of bad is a pretty cool trait to have, and it'll shift your mindset. I think one of the leadership things, though, that Bush did really well was a couple days later at Ground Zero with the megaphone, right? And the folks that I heard you, and the folks that did this stuff is going to hear from all of us pretty soon, and that was a pretty cool John Wayne moment. We were all pretty pissed, and that was the right attitude, the leadership. If I can find fault in the president's approach, it is this. I think he was at like a United Airlines or United Speed. He had like all airline personnel with him. And I'll never forget this because I get what he intended, but it failed. And his intention was this. Go back to flying. Go back to your lives. We don't want them to win. Let's keep pressing forward. I got the spirit, but the execution of it failed. Why? Because it became a war over there. My dad, my grandfather on my dad's side was on a sub in the Pacific, man. My dad and mom grew up in World War II. They rationed gasoline. They rationed nylon to make parachutes. I mean, you were in it. We were all in this war. These wars that we are currently in, unfortunately, it's so far removed. You see a veteran, back when we were in Afghanistan before our surrender, you see a vet getting off an airline or a disabled vet, you're like, oh yeah, that's still going on. My son, on the morning of 9/11, I was holding him watching the horrors unfold before I gave him back to my wife and ran out. He's 23. He was 8 months old at the time. So 20-year war, okay? And you want to talk about some serious leadership failures, it's the admirals and the generals who sat there for 2 decades under oath on a green table with a glass of water looking at our leaders saying what? Everything's great. Just need more money and everything's great. There's a revolving door in between the Pentagon and Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics. General to executive door. So these men and women, these failed generals and admirals, lied. I have high confidence in the Afghan National Army they fell in 48 hours, dude. They dropped their weapons and ditched their uniforms and were like, what Americans? We love the Taliban.
They jumped out, right? And, God bless Jonathan. We talked about him just a second ago. Jonathan Myers, he went against the grain he got pulled in there to go do a report on it, and he stood tall to the commandant and said, here's what's actually going on.
Correct. And that's not career enhancing.
No, we talked about that. Like it probably ruined his career to hit general.
Yeah, exactly. You got to play the Potomac two-step. You do not make flag under Obama or Joe Biden without being of a certain political slant. I know several bros. One was a commanding officer of an aircraft carrier recently who unless you run a carrier aground, you screen for flag. He had to captain out because he's a good dude who spoke truth to power. So it's kind of sad to be talking about leadership and be talking about our current United States military because I just don't see it. One of the worst leadership failures that I've seen recently with the Afghanistan fiasco was during the pullout. Obviously, the bombing at Abbey Gate. We wanted blood, right? Hell, we got kicked in the face. What did we do a day or two later? A drone strike. Within hours of the drone strike, General Milley was at the Pentagon. I'll never forget this quote and this clip. It was a righteous strike. With his tough talk. Maybe 5, 10, 15 hours later, we think that was a car full of civilians. Oh, and by the way, it was 7 children with 3 adults looking for water. You know what happened? Nothing. A year investigation into that drone strike. You know who was held accountable? Nobody. So when our enemies kill civilians, we froth at the mouth and call it a war crime. When we kill civilians, it was an accident and nobody's responsible. That made me furious, bro, because I'm a Navy guy. The last time I checked with the Navy, of course, it might have changed by now. If the commanding officer of an aircraft carrier is asleep, eating chow, down on the treadmill, meeting in the reactor room, and the ship runs aground, you know who's fired? The commanding officer of the ship. And some people might go, well, that's not fair. It should be the person driving the boat. They're all going to they're going to get clipped too. It's not a career enhancing move, but there's ultimately one person responsible on that aircraft carrier, and it's the commanding officer. And people are like, well, he or she was sleeping. Well, the admiral relieving the captain is going to go, then you should have spent less time sleeping, eating chow or on the treadmill or meeting with the reactor crew. You should have been on the bridge. So to see that type of failure of leadership, somebody should have stood up and said, I gave the order to do that, and it was wrong, and I am ultimately responsible. In today's military, dude, you do not see any of that. I long for the days of a Colin Powell or a Schwarzkopf who would use
those guys were the leaders. They'd
use the words, I either succeeded or I failed. Today's military, dude, it is, we're all going to point at each other and maybe you, and no, it's awful.
Yeah, but I don't think that's just in the military today, right?
Oh my God, it's corporate America. Yeah.
It's the art of deflection, right? And it's, hey, I'm gonna get you distracted. Yeah. And so you see this everywhere, right? You like, if something's going astray, it's misdirection.
Yeah.
It's hey, this thing's a burning dumpster right here, regardless of what it is, military, corporate America, you cross-functional meeting, I have a dumpster fire here. And oh my gosh, did you know that that's happening over here? It's the misdirection, and it's the, hey, just take your eyes off it for a second. We got the fire extinguishers going over here. We're putting it out. But we want to have the misdirection here. And that's, it's not just systemic to a military thing. It's when there's not true accountability for what's going on. And so I think that's just an important lesson for people to understand is when you're looking for true leaders, you're looking for that true leadership among your rank. You want somebody that isn't afraid to say, you know what, I own this. I got it.
I'm telling you, man. So shameless plug, I wrote a book called From Sea Level to Sea Level. When I went to Chicago and helped run this multi-billion-dollar firm, one of the coolest things in the world that these people have ever seen was a debrief. Like, if something bad would happen in that trading firm, I'm like, oh, okay, we're all going to meet at 5:00 after the market closes in this room. We're going to figure out what worked, what didn't, and how we're going to get better. And the partners looked at me like, oh my God, that's brilliant. I'm like, You don't do this? So
Right.
in fighter aviation, bro, if you and I just went out and flew together, we get into a room, we lock the door, we take off the name tags and the rank, so there's no rank or anything, no punches are pulled, and we are brutally honest with each other. I went to be an instructor pilot, but I looked at the blues for a little bit because you got to rush the blues, and then I kind of pre-rushed because I'm like, let me go see what they're all about. I couldn't do it, dude. First of all, I can't do loops to music for 2 years, but it was cool. I got to fly with them once in Oklahoma City, and in the debrief, man, you would think they hated each other. They don't. They love each other. They have absolute trust. So, man, you know, before the debrief starts, they go around the room and they get to fess up. This is free. If you don't fess up that you screwed up, and we're going to point it out to you, man, that door opens up again. They're best friends. One of the, you know, I remember flying with my, you know, when you leave the RAG, you get your wings, go to the RAG, learn how to fly the Hornet. When I went to my first fleet squadron, you know, you're on the skipper's wing for like a month or two because I want to make sure you're not a complete idiot, right? So I was flying with the skipper for, you know, a good time, thinking I'm doing pretty good. And I just, you know, didn't have a good hop. And we get into the debrief, and he like rips me to shreds, I thought. And I'm like, whoa. So I crawl over to the officers club to put out the flames with a beer. And he comes in later, and I see him coming in, and I kind of do that tactical 90-degree turn, you know, to give him a little. He comes up
like
to me.
I just did right here in my chair, right?
Exactly.
Like I'm at the bar with you, and I flip over, and I'm like, hey, what's going on?
Little tactical 90. And he's like, Whiz, what's up, man? I'm like, well, skipper, you know, I thought you were a little harsh on me in the debrief. And he's like, what? He's like, Whiz, I love you, man. He's like, I wouldn't let you near one of my F-18 Hornets if I didn't think you had the capability to do this. He's like, I think the world of you. I think the world of your beautiful bride, and I know you can do better. And that wasn't your best. And it's my job to surface that shit and bring it to you. And I expect you, if you see me dogging it, you better point that out to me. And if you don't, I'm going to be pissed at you. And then we were best friends and drank the rest of the night together. It was like a 2x4 to the head. So, you know, it ain't personal, it's professional. And a lot of folks in the business world tend not to debrief because you told me I did something wrong. The way we start a debrief in a fighter squadron is inside out criticism, just like the Blue Angels. I start with, hey man, here's where I know I sucked on this flight. And then I ripple it off. And then I look around the room and I go, what do you all got for me? What did I miss? How can I do better?
Yeah.
So that kind of lowers the barriers to communication. Instead of force fields up and I'm going to defend myself, it's you let it out, man. You unzip your fly. And so that's why the culture of a fighter squadron is pretty cool, because we don't want to die. We don't want to hit each other, and we want to succeed. So when you have that type of culture, it makes it easier to debrief. But when you got a very defensive culture and, you know, you want to elevate yourself by bringing other people down, that ain't going to work. So that's why, again, shameless plug, check out my book, From Sea Level to Sea Level. It's pretty funny going from a fighter squadron to a trading firm and trying to explain some of these concepts.
Yeah, because in a situation like that, it's all about how do you get. It's like there's the ladder, who can climb it first, right?
And they're wearing golf cleats to step on you. Cleats.
Yeah. And they're kicking at you from above if they can get up there higher. Anyway,
agreed.
That's exactly it.